Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Regardless of listening to this recording or being live, know that this is the perfect timing for you. It's such a joy to see all the beautiful faces of the live people. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome. My name's Allison Bachmeyer, for those of you who I'm new to, and welcome to Transform Emotions into Energy series. So this is our third year of doing this, and how these typically go is I give a little bit of left brain information about the emotion, processing it, how that correlates to Chinese medicine primarily, and then we'll dive into doing a body talk session. And with that, we'll explore how that may have been hooked into your body mind. And excuse me, what's always interesting to see is how many people tend to respond with the words, "I thought that session was just for me," even though it's for the group. It's the most common feedback I tend to receive. So I invite you to find a nice, quiet, cozy place where you can settle in and get comfy for our time together here. Assuming you haven't already. I'm just going to grab a Kleenex real quick. Okay. And for our time together, it'll be about 60 to 70 minutes or so. I always aim for an hour, but I tend to get a little chatty with these things, so I might go a little bit overboard. I give myself a bit of wiggle room, I've learned over the years. Okay. And know that this series is perfect and open to anyone and everyone. So if you feel called to share it again and again and again with anyone who is interested in it, I welcome you to do so. I'm going to be posting the video of this as well on social media, on Facebook, and you're welcome to share it right from the Facebook page, Allison Bachmeyer, or Vibrant Transformation. It'll be on both spots. Okay. And in addition to that, you're welcome just to verbally let people know, hey, I'm in this offering and it's free for this week. So you're welcome to join. So it'll stay free and complimentary until June 8th, actually. So a little bit past this week. Okay, so let's dive in, shall we? Without any further ado. And thank you to the kind comments in the chat feature rolling in. Love those. Yeah, for the chat feature, you are welcome to post any questions or comments as they arise. If you have any curiosities that come up for you or you would like some clarifications, please do post them there. I won't necessarily be paying a lot of attention to it until we get into nearish the end, or I pause before we dive into the session. I'll take a glance and see if there's any questions we can clear up for anybody over there. All right, y'all. So for today's topic, transforming fear into healthy action, let's maybe back up even one step further and just talk about emotions in general. So emotion, no mistake that it's spelled emotion. E is also an abbreviation in physics, meaning energy. Emotion in Chinese medicine is also very much considered to be just that, energy in motion. Energy in motion. What if all of that emotional energy is simply there to support the health and the healing of your body, mind, and the expression of its fullest capacity for life that it has to offer you? What if? What if the emotions weren't misbehaving? What if your emotions weren't misbehaving? What if they were misbehaving? What if the emotions that are arising for you are just simply to get your attention for something? As soon as we take that emotional energy and we use it in the form of making it personal, it actually steals the energy away that emotion was meant to do to support the health of certain areas of the body mind. It's a different way of looking at emotions. We're going to be honoring the traditional Chinese medicine approach to the 5-element theory by looking at the 5/6 emotions as it works with the Body Talk protocol as well. It'll be my main framework here. And then I'll be tying in other tools and bits of awarenesses in the other trainings that I also have. I'll be tying in all the tools that support this work. Okay. So when we're talking about the emotion specifically of fear, well, you can tune into this in your own body. When you have fear happening, and that might show up, it's most commonly referred to as fight, flight, freeze. It could also be, I don't know where I am, disorientated type of energy. It could also be fawning. There's a lot of F words that get associated here. How does that show up inside of you? What does it feel like when you're in that space of thinking that that fear that's shown up in this moment is personal? Typically speaking, fear tends to draw things tight. We get ready to either defend or run. And fear energy is very much about going to the core. It's drawing everything in to keep it safe and protected. Yet, if that is happening in a way that doesn't actually allow for you to recognize what it is and lead to healthy action, then we end up getting fear stuck and frozen in time. And that fear energy will collect most commonly in the natural organs and meridian lines that it's meant to be processed with and through. And those, for our purposes, for the emotion of fear, correlates to the element of water. And the element of water works primarily with two meridians, kidney meridian and bladder meridian. The kidney meridian, just to give you a little snippet and know that that's all we're doing. We're just but scratching the surface when we're talking in this way. The kidney meridian runs up the inner leg and goes through to the core of the body, the water element, because it's very much about being at the core. This is roughly where that kidney meridian is running. As it runs through the core here, it then branches up and it goes up to the head brain. The head brain is thought to be the flower of the kidney meridian. There's a certain poetry in Chinese medicine that I've come to very much appreciate. The bladder meridian runs more on the outer edge of the foot, and then it travels up through the heels. It runs up the back body, encircles the buttocks, and then goes into either side of the spine. And it runs there and it continues to rise, and then encircles and goes through the back of the head. So it actually governs the majority of our back body postural muscles. Okay? And the balance point is always interesting to look at too. If we're more in kidney or bladder mode, it'll arise often in subtle different ways that you might be present to. Okay, so I just invite you to track those areas of the body and see what you notice. Now, those meridians also correlate with governing certain specific muscle groupings of the body mind. The kidney meridian, this is the yin portion, or the feminine, works with the iliopsoas muscle that connects the hip and the low back. And that iliopsoas muscle often takes a beating from sitting. So if we find ourselves sitting a little bit more and more these days, our iliopsoas muscles might get tighter and tighter and tighter. And it might feel difficult to actually just sit up and to extend and become straight again. We might get prone to having really tight hips or really tight low back. That's all related to this emotion and this meridian line. Okay? Now, another muscle grouping that goes with the iliopsoas is the upper traps. So if you think of when you're in a lot of fear, it's really easy to just go and contract those. And we tend to live in a society where we are always nearby a cell phone and we look down, and this kind of emotion just naturally tends to go with it to a certain extent. So if we're under technology a lot, if we're sitting a lot, if we're driving a car a lot, and that headrest is pushing us forward, it puts strain in all of those muscle groupings. Now, for the bladder meridian side of things, it works a little bit more with the calf muscles, either side of the spine, the postural muscles that I mentioned earlier. Okay, and it also works with the muscles that run in the front of the lower leg as well. Okay, so broad groupings here. If you want fancy names, the postural muscles, the erector spinae or the sacrospinalis, the muscles in the calf are more related to the anterior, posterior tibialis and the peroneals, however you like to pronounce that. So those are roughly the muscle groupings, but they tend to have an impact that spreads beyond that. And the water element being the most core of them is felt, typically speaking, throughout the entire body mind. When the kidney meridian has low chi, that impacts the entire system, because the kidneys are meant to have just a little bit of extra reserve. And that reserve is meant to be available for all the organs and the meridians whenever they should arise as a need to have a little extra chi, a little extra vitality. And if the kidneys become depleted, everything else doesn't have the extra supports, the extra cushion that it would like to have. So if we feel like we're unsupported, if we feel like we're running just on fumes, if we feel like, the world is feeling like it's about to close in on us from that fear, those are good signs that something is up potentially here within these realms. So it's always interesting to look at the seasons that go with this. The water element correlates with the season of winter. And winter is very much that time where there's that capacity to let go of a lot of things. There's a time of releasing, of surrendering, of letting go, a time of death, really, in a way, to make room to let the new in. So the water element helps to release that and create seeds to germinate the newness, yeah, and that can be available to flow again. So this is the meridian that I always associate with like rivers and like the bottom of the ocean, and think of how water can go anywhere and it can settle right into the very core of the earth itself. So whenever we need to get to the core of an issue, it's often helpful to look at the kidney and the bladder. Fear is often the last holdout for that. In fact, the iliopsoas muscle is often thought to be just that, the final frontier of fear. The final frontier of fear, meaning it's like the last little holdout that once that releases, there's a lot more life force energy that can begin to move through the system and release whatever that little nugget of stuff was. So I invite you, if you haven't already, to again find that nice, quiet, cozy place. We're going to be heading into the session here in just a couple more minutes. If you have any questions at this time, we're just doing a very surface level look at this, and I could honestly talk about this for days, weeks, maybe even a little bit longer. It's a pretty fascinating, juicy topic for moi. And if you have any questions, comments, queries, feel free to type that on in. I'm not seeing anything pop up in the chat feature just yet, so maybe we'll check back in on that at the end of the session. And we only have about 10% or so of you on the live call. So for those of you listening to the recordings, if you have questions, feel free to email them to me, and I can always answer them in the follow-up calls that are continuing on this week. So we're actually meeting at 10 a.m. My province's time here in Canada, which is on the time zone MDT, or it's actually CST, but that seems to get confusing with daylight savings time. And in different countries around the world, CST seems to be slightly variable somehow. So I tend to just refer to MDT time zone to make life easy, although I do live in the CST time zone. We'll be meeting every day at 10 a.m. for the remainder of the week, and I'll be posting the recordings on the course that you signed up for. To support the capacity to make them shareable, I'll be also posting them to my YouTube channel as well as to Facebook. So that can help to support your capacity to share them, which is the only cost of this course. Now, you don't even need to pay that cost of the course if it doesn't feel like that's something that you're wanting to do. Don't take that on as pressure. No worries, no anxiety here either way. Always appreciated, however, if you're feeling the call and you feel open and welcome to do so. And then I invite you to honor that that commitment of the investment here with a share in whatever way feels right for you. It doesn't have to be on social media, although it always helps my reach a lot, I must admit. Honestly, I get just as much reach from word of mouth. I think I built my business on word of mouth years ago, to be honest. So really happy, however, it gets shared. And I think we can always need a little bit more social human connection. So feel free to do that verbally if you would prefer to get away from a computer screen for just a little bit. Okay. Okay, loves. So I invite you to settle in and begin here by means of breathing. Just giving yourself a few slow, deep inhales and exhales. And as you do so, just take a scan of the body, of the mind, and notice how you're feeling in this moment. Just checking in with yourself as if it's the first time and noticing what's present here, now. Feel free to make any subtle adjustments to your posture. This isn't required to be a stationary event, so feel free to let the body move as it needs to, as it feels called to during our work together. And now that you've got a sense of what's happening in there for you right now in this moment, I invite you to breathe into those areas, giving them a few slow, deep breaths. Those of you with a conscious, connected breath practice, I invite you to explore your breath in that territory here as well. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for breathing. Thank you for being alive. And thank you to all that's brought you here. Families, thank you to your families. Thank you to your ancestors. Thank you to all that have come before you. Thank you for being here. Every breath, an opportunity to invoke new life. Every breath, an opportunity to release, to let go. And just begin to feel yourself sink even deeper into that cushion below you. Simply allowing the supports of the cushion below. As I invite the energy of the group in, I'm inviting this in for all that will be listening to this across space and time. And as I invite the group energy in, I see this mass pouring in to the 7th house in astrology. So astrology thinks that everything goes through 12 houses, 12 phases. They happen to call them houses. And house number 7 happens to tie into the Bladder Meridian. And that Bladder Meridian, as we mentioned, runs up that back body. Excuse me, I'm just going to grab some water. correlates to the nervous system. Our water elements in general, I'll keep tying in theoretical pieces. I just didn't want to let the left brain stuff at the beginning go on too long. The the bladder meridian helps to support the nervous system, and the seventh house works with our relationships, our partnerships. So where might we have some issues with communication, which is what our nervous system represents, in partnerships and relationships? Those might be in your outer worlds, those might be in your inner world. As we work with this in the umbrella, if we will, of the seventh house, we're going to actually support this nervous system energy, the entire nervous system. And we're working with it with hydration, first of all. Hydration helps cells to absorb water and joy and release any impurities that just don't need to be here anymore. And as we do so, I see this just inviting the nervous system into the what's often referred to in polyvagal theory as the window of tolerance. If we dip below the window of tolerance, we enter the realm of hypoarousal, where things can feel just a little bit numb and dull or shut down, or a lot numb, dull, shut down, cut off, difficult to feel. On the other end of the scale, hyperarousal is when things get quite agitated and angsty, okay, and frazzled and disconnected. So we're just looking for that middle ground, again, that window of tolerance. And as this hydration for the nervous system pours in at a pace that's comfortable for you, I invite you, if you feel drawn to participate in this, you're welcome to do so. Scanning the body mind and looking for a place that feels like it's the most alive, that's the most you, that's the most present, that's the most here for you. What part of your body mind can be a bit of a resource? And as we touch in on whatever area that is that you feel drawn to, I invite you to just give that a few slow, deep breaths. And then we're going to connect that into the bladder meridian, into the nervous system energy, as well as into the seventh house, using it to support giving that sense of safety and protection, to allow for this communication, allow for this nervous system to begin to really be here, be present, perhaps in a way that wasn't so available before. And as we breathe this resource in to these areas, it's linking into an active memory. And that's simply a memory that has a bit of an emotional charge to it. And the active memory is of being born. Birth is often thought to be our first moment of separation. And that moment of separation is where fear comes from. It's often that first sense of, uh-oh, will I have everything that I need here? Am I supported here? And as we work with this particular key moment in life where we first feel this separation and that fear sets in, it can often show up as the fear of not knowing where I am. There can be disorientation. That disorientation can also come from just being in labor and not knowing what's happening with the walls closing in and this whole ejection process into life that's happening. And that disorientation energy is not uncommon to be stored somewhere around the neck. So as we release this, it's actually coming off of the base of the neck, the upper trap muscles. And it's also going into a little bit of the SCM, the sternocleidomastoid, where it attaches onto the sternum, the bone in the center of the chest, the clavicles, and the bones just behind the ears, the mastoid processes. These literally help us to see where we are. Yeah. And often these are very hard-working muscles during the labor and delivery process when you are making your way out of that birth canal. Okay. So as we work with this, we're also going to bring in a little bit of resourcing in a different way this time for the traps. We're going to bring in all the elements that circulate, all the healing resources that circulate through our system, including blood that carries our passion, nerve our communication, lymph that drains our toxins, gunk, waste, low self-esteem, overthinking, overanalyzing, along with sheer vitality, consciousness or awareness, right down into all the little guys, the electrons, the protons, the solitons, the neutrons. Also working with the sounds, the colors, the frequencies of all the chakras, major and minor, endorphins, hormones, and endocannabinoids that lower inflammation, anxiety, depression, help out our nervous and our immune systems alike to heal. As we work with this, we're also inviting in the balance point between yin and yang, feminine and masculine energy. And from a Chinese medicine perspective, we're all roughly 50-50, okay? And regardless of being a male body or a female body, we might have a little bit more yin or yang in us overall. But for the most part, we're pretty close to being decently balanced there. And we're also bringing in hydration here as well, helping these muscles to absorb water and joy, releasing any impurities that just don't need to be here. And as we do so, releasing the fear of trying to figure out, where am I? Where am I? And it's almost as if there's this question of, is it safe to be here in this new little place that I've arrived in, but I'm not sure where that is? And how that's showing up is it safe to be on this earth? Is it safe to walk this earth? And that's linking into the Bladder Meridian. Now the Bladder Meridian starts on that outside edge of the foot. And I actually see both sides lighting up like Christmas trees with just that statement. Is it safe to walk on this earth? Is it safe to be on this earth? Am I supposed to be here? Do I feel like I'm a human that was supposed to be born in this way and arrive here in this place on Earth? Or do I feel a little bit like a starseed? Feel a little bit split? So that Bladder Meridian is now linking, it's rising up through the heels into the lower legs. And I see this new chi coming to life from the outside edge of the feet, running a permissions here. And the words are simply, I claim myself. And I welcome myself as a second permissions. So as you welcome yourself and as you claim this home, this body as yours, this energy begins to rise up the Bladder Meridian, through the lower legs. Yeah. And then it hits the knee, and the knee works, well, it's governed heavily by the kidney meridian, along with the low back, especially where the lumbosacral joint is in that low back, where the lumbar spine meets the sacrum, or where the low back meets the pelvis. And we need to work with this connection between the knees and that L5-S1 junction point, or that low back, where the spine joins onto the pelvis. Okay, and what I'm seeing is moving through life from the place of the intellect, or trying to think our way through life, trying to figure it out, to make sense of it. Anybody try to make sense of life or their lives? Yeah. So as we work with this energy of trying to make sense of life itself, the struggle, that intellect is stored in the quads, and it's not allowing for this ease to transition through life from perhaps a place of greater ease. And that tends to happen more so through the heart brain. But as we look with this struggle of the intellect and trying to figure life out, trying to understand it, all the questions that we have, why did this happen for me? Why did this happen in this way? Why is life unfolding in this way? Those questions that we ask. I'm just seeing that gently peel away bioenergetically, almost like rolling up a piece of heavy sod. And as that begins to release through the quads, letting that new life arise from the knees through to the pelvis, through to the low back. And just running your permissions here. I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be here. And as we do that, running a cellular repair, restoring the cells of the knees, of the low back to their fullest potential of health. What if they didn't have to brace against life anymore by having to think about it? What if they could just open up to allowing life to move through the body-minds? And as we work with that, there's a fear of feeling that's stored in the left atrium of the heart. We've gotten to the heart of the matter. If you feel drawn to participate in this way, I invite you to take a hand to your left upper chamber, upper left side of your heart, which is where the left atria is. And just giving this all a few slow, deep inhales and exhales. If you can connect to the energy of fear here, and just playing with this with whatever sensory observations are available in this moment, whatever arises is perfect. If fear had a feeling in this upper chamber of your heart, what might it feel like? What might it feel like? Feel free to give that all a few slow, deep breaths as you connect to this fear of feeling itself. It's a juicy question. You might need the breath to support. What does this feeling feel like? And if that's too much to explore, then let's direct our attention to the other sensory observations that are also available. If this fear had a sound, a word, a message, a noise, a tone, what might that be? And as you listen here, you might even hear a tone or a note or a sound. And if it feels right, you're welcome to externalize that sound or even just hear it internally and let that reverberation of that sound simply be as it is and honoring its presence. Yeah, thank you. And if this fear of feeling had a smell, a taste, what would it smell or taste like? And if there was a visual, what would this look like, this fear of feeling? Does it have a texture, an image, a shape, a color? And if it had a color, what color might it be? Whatever color arises, whatever imagery has arisen, whatever other sensory observations that you've been present to, breathe into them all and make them all more seemingly present and here. Intensify them as much as is tolerable. If at any point something becomes intolerable, go back to that resource that we found at the very beginning. And as you breathe into all that's here, I invite you to just imagine how much is here. Is this roughly the size, as you breathe into it, of a ping pong ball or a pea, a grapefruit, a watermelon, a beach ball, maybe bigger? And as you've got a sense of however much is here for you, loosening up the edges of this all by means of breathing. There's something powerful about the breath. It's the only capacity of the body that you can consciously control and that unconsciously your body will do for you without you having to think about it. When you harness the power of the breath, a lot can happen. So I invite you as you breathe into here to loosen up the edges, loosening up those edges until this is ready to go. And you'll know it's ready to go because you'll feel it so loose that it begins to enter your hands. And when you feel like you've got a hold of it, when you've got a hold of most, all, anywhere in between is perfect. I invite you to, again, give that another slow, deep breath. And just gently releasing the energy that's here, using your hand, moving your hand. For those of you who like a countdown in 3, 2, 1. Please honor your own timing for those of you who don't like a countdown. And just unwinding and releasing that. You don't need to do anything special with it. We're just going to let it release to the floor, dropping away. I've got it on this end, so even if it feels like there's a little bit left in your hands or anywhere else, I'll clean it up over here. If you feel drawn to, take a hand back to that upper left part of the heart, that left atrium, and feel free to do another sweep if you feel like there's a little bit more energy there. That's ready to release. And if anyone feels like there's an emptiness or a void, there's lack in some way, shape, or form, I invite you to breathe in light into this area. Not required, but if you feel drawn to, you're welcome to. Moonlight, sunlight, white lights, silver light, gold lights, pink lights can all be really powerful to play with. So see whatever calls to you, or if there's something else that's arising, honor that. Listening to what your body is asking for in this moment, above and beyond what anyone else asked you to do, including me. And I'm just tapping that in. I didn't mention that earlier. For some of you who aren't looking at the video, you might not have noticed that. But as you breathe here and as you work here, I'm tapping this all in. If you feel drawn to, you're welcome to join in the tapping. For those of you new to Body Talk, we tap over the head brain, the gut brain, which is anywhere around the navel, and the heart brain. You're never required. I'm taking care of it on this end. But if you feel drawn to, you're welcome to tap it in. Just giving that all another slow, deep breath. And if you feel open to this, if it feels supportive, I invite you to take a hand back to that area where you were working. And just take a scan again and notice what's here, if anything. There might be a feeling getting present to what's here. There might be a sound, a smell, a taste. There might be an image, a color, a texture. Just notice what's different. Notice what's different from the first time that you looked. And whatever that's present in this space, if there's tenderness, if there's hurt, if there's ache, if there's heartache, if there's some sort of a wounding that's present here, we're going to do just a little bit of the Sedona method. I invite you to notice and welcome whatever's here in this space for you. And as you breathe into this and welcome it and allow it to be here just as it is, you may notice a shift and a change. So feel free to continually observe as we go here. As you welcome this energy to be here, just as it is, without the need to do anything about it, just notice what that's like. Often just the welcoming of something ends that push-pull struggle that we can have. And that push-pull is where, well, there's a lot of juicy information within that to be paid attention to. So I invite you just to notice and welcome and just keep welcoming whatever's here, even if it is the tendency to want to push it away, to not want to do this, to be numb or blank or go, and dismiss it. Notice that and welcome that to be here too. And then with this, also welcoming the different stories, judgments, ideas around feeling, different beliefs. Paying attention to the different stories and thoughts that the mind boots up in this moment, and welcoming them all to be here. Welcoming them to be here just as they are. And then also, you may have already started to think about how you can change or fix this. So I'm going to invite you to welcome that too. Welcoming the need to have this be different. Welcoming the need to fix it, the need to save it. And then now, welcoming all that seems personal, like this is somehow about you, that it's yours to carry, that it's personal in some way, shape, or form. And just giving this a gentle breath, I invite you to also now welcome the all that is beyond this. Welcoming what is beyond all of this. Welcoming what is beyond all of this. And just simply allowing this to be here as it is. And allowing yourself to be here just as you are. And welcoming yourself to be here just as you are, even a little bit more than that. Yeah, you're doing so good. You're doing so well. Just welcoming yourself to be here just as you are. Beauty. I'm just going to tap that in. Feel free to give that all a few slow, deep breaths. And if you like, you can keep your hand there if that feels supportive in any way, shape, or form. Feel free to do so. I'm going to move mine. And with that, it looks like the knee and the low back stuff have calmed down a fair amount. If at any point in time you feel the need, you feel called back to check in on that resource, feel free to do so and just give that a slow, deep breath whenever required for you. Now, there's another layer that's ready to go, and it's coming in through the back and the front of the pelvis all at the same time. So I might have to take a minute to use some words to speak to it all, but know that it's all very connected. Okay? The back of that bladder meridian is working with now the feeling of being punished, in particular around the buttock region. And I likely don't have to spell out why this would be a very common area to store feelings of punishment. And here we're working with punishment energy in total. So that could be a punishment that you have perceived coming in from others, in particular in early childhood is what I'm seeing. But it's connected to now how it is you punish yourself. How do you punish yourself? Do you keep yourself in drive mode, go mode, even though you're tired? Do you deprive yourself of something that you need for nourishment? Those sorts of things. How do you punish yourself? There might be certain words, there might be certain emotions that go with that for you. What I'm seeing present here is doing an emotional release of shame and releasing the underlying need for punishments as we do so. And then from the front of the pelvis, what's going with that is a fear of simultaneously the feminine feeling the fear of objectification and the masculine fearing emasculation. So these are no small themes. As we work with this, we're going to be running a defrag. And as you can think of this as almost creating like two walls of fear from the back and the front, as we work with this defrag, much like a computer defrag or a spring clean, taking out the clutter that doesn't need to be here. What remains can be readily reorganized and utilized for healing. As that begins to run, we're going to invite in all those same healing resources that circulate throughout our body, the blood, the nerve, the lymph, the chi, the consciousness, the electrons, the protons, the solitons, the neutrons. Also bringing in now the energy of endocannabinoids that lower inflammation, endorphins, hormones, and all the chakras, their frequencies, their sounds, their colors. I just hear the phrase, lighting up life again. Yeah. As we invite these healing resources in, the walls begin to move off the back and off the front, and it makes space for that light to light up your life again. I see that coming from deep within, at the very core of you, starting at the base of the body-mind. And as it begins to rise, this light, this life force energy, this whatever you want to call it, pick your favorite wording and name for it all. I see it just slowly making a little bit more space, making more space. There's space for you. There's room for you. You're supposed to be here. This is the perfect space and time for you to be here. And then we're unhooking the guilt of I've done something wrong. I've done something wrong. Something by showing up, I've done something wrong. And we're unhooking the belief system that there's something to be guilty about within your presence. that your presence requires guilt to go with it, that your body mind, that the sense of you has to carry an apology of any sort within it. And we're releasing that need to apologize. That could also be a form of self-punishment. And in true transparency, I think about 10 days ago, I apologized to a wall I walked into because, well, I'm Canadian, it's what we do. Yeah. So looking in the subtle ways and the big ways that we apologize for ourselves, for our presence, to just simply be here and to be welcomed, versus apologize for maybe a different change of pace for it. So as we release this apologetic nature, that tends to draw us into contracted states of fear in subtle ways that add up over time. Opening up, and allowing for the freedom of your expression of you to begin in a way that it may not have been available to be supported before. I just see that again arising now through the second chakra, whatever name you call that, Sacral Chakra, Sexual Chakra. It goes by a lot of names. And as that begins to light up this region of vitality, just below the navel, the energy center known as the hara, which is often interchanged with the name of that chakra, is here, along with conception vessel 6 acupuncture points, which is a point right on the midline, just below the navel a little bit, of our front body. And it correlates to our primary feminine nature, And we need to link this conception vessel 6 acupuncture point, interestingly enough, up to the eyes, into the inner corner of the eyes, so that you can see vitality. You can see your vitality. You can see what nourishes your vitality. It's probably not apologizing. You can see whatever else you need to call in and release and let go of to support this new capacity to contain and hold on. Hold on is not the right word, but to allow the energy of this vitality to simply be here without having to hang on, without having to push away, without having to defend against. Yeah, we're just ending a little bit of that struggle that's been here. As we work with bladder 1 acupuncture points, that inner corner of the eye, it helps us to see the present moment and what's available to us with new eyes. It also helps to orient us to what's here, what's now. So releasing another layer of that disorientation that we worked with earlier, that we correlated, in case your memory might need a little bit of a reminder on any of this, that we correlated to the being born. So in a way, this rebirth that potentially you might call it, that we've been unwinding through the pelvis here, has created some space for you to orient and land into your body mind, into your space, into your life from a new point of view. At the same time as all of that, we're going into house number 8 in astrology, which works with the kidney meridian. This is the house of the cycles of death and birth, releasing the old, embracing the new. And so much so that death and birth cycle can happen on such a quick cellular level inside of your body mind. It doesn't have to refer to an entire person being born, but so much so that at a cellular level, those cells can discard the old and invite in the new, and that energy of the death and the birth can actually give rise as well to new life. And in doing so, perhaps giving rise to a new awareness on relationships. This is the house of interrelationships, or interrelatedness, or relatedness, to simplify it even further. So house 7, the bladder, was about relationships. House number 8 is about relatedness. It's been said in many ways by many different teachers. My favorite, though, as of late, is Allison A. Armstrong. And if you've heard me talk about her before, you know how much I enjoy her work. And she refers to this concept of relationships being a hallucination or an illusion of sorts. Yeah, and instead, all that's available is instances of being related. Now, this is a bit heady and philosophical, and if it doesn't land, that's okay. Just let it go. But if there's something here for you in this, know that we're balancing the movement from relationships to interrelatedness as we embrace house number 8 here. And giving rise to new birth, if we will, a new capacity for you to relate differently. To relate differently might be an easier way to say that, to absorb that. This is also, as we do embrace the 8th house energy, the space of regeneration. And the natural planetary energy that runs here is that of Mars and Pluto. Now, Pluto is very much about, Mars is very much about self-expression. And the other qualities that it carries are often around the struggle to survive. So you can think of this as balancing out the need to compete to survive, the need to create divisions to survive, and instead the capacity to move beyond survival into this capacity to express this new life force energy of you. In a long-winded way, it's just helping that energy now to rise through the pelvis and into the solar plexus region as we end these needs for just having to live life out of survival means and open up space, opening up this territory of your body mind, opening up capacities that you may not have been present to before, but that have always been here. And creating regeneration as we embrace this life force energy and release the struggle of having to keep those divides, having to keep us separate from life itself. That birth experience sets the stage for how we push, how we invite in life. So where's the dance for you? Where are you pushing away life? Where are you inviting in life? And as we do so, as we work with that energy, that balance point of pushing and calling in or inviting in, it's linking to the energy of the lungs, which also work with regeneration and inviting in new life. As we work with this regeneration capacity from the lungs, it's also inviting in the energy of boundaries. Boundaries helping to sift out what doesn't need to be here, while allowing for you to embrace even more life, while feeling safe and protected to do so. Boundaries don't need to be harsh or have a lot of energy to push. They can be sensual. You can dance with them. They can be dynamic. They can be an integral part of life itself. They may be, in effect, how we regenerate. And it doesn't have to be verbal. By the point we get to having to state a verbal boundary, it usually means our energetic boundaries have been, dropped a little bit. Yeah. And the other side of that can feel like we've been disrespected. So as we work with this, we're actually unhooking the energy of disrespect from the diaphragm. And that allows for this new life force, this new light to continue to rise all the way to the heart, which is the center of respect. And near as I can tell in my own personal explorations, near as I can tell, this may also support dignity, to stand with dignity in this life, to walk with dignity. As we release that disrespect from the diaphragm, it also frees up the diaphragm's capacity to do what it does best, which is to process your emotions. It's very difficult for emotions to be processed without the diaphragm being open. We have 2 ways when we work with Body Talk with emotions. The basic way that's taught originally is to bring up all the emotions into the diaphragm and then release them into the intestines to let them go. I'm using more of the advanced forms of it, which we work with in bioenergetic emotional releasing in kind of like the energy of free fall, for those of you familiar with that course. And instead, we're just unhooking and releasing and letting that all go. So it's just a different way of doing it for those of you who might be a bit confused as body talkers who haven't gotten into the advanced form of doing it. This diaphragm, in addition to processing emotions, also is your center for integration, and it balances what are you holding on to and what are you allowing to move through. In a way, it creates its own rigid boundary so readily. If you think of when you don't want to cry in public, what's the first thing that we do? We hold our breath so that we don't have to express whatever it is, so that we don't have to feel whatever it is. Yeah. And ideally, we're waiting until we have space and time, we feel safe and protected to allow for that expression to move through. But often enough, that fear energy and all the emotions beyond that I'll be talking about in the next 4 days don't get a chance to complete their cycles. And instead they land and they stay stuck somewhere in the body mind until we do emotional release work such as this, until we breathe into them with breath work, until we honor them, until we open up the capacity to feel them and to feel life, to feel alive again. As we release this disrespect energy from the diaphragm and allow for that light, that life force energy that is you, to reach the heart, connecting with harmony, with passion, with joy, with pleasure, with respect, with sensuality. Running up permissions here, it is safe to feel again. It is safe to feel again. Bringing in the essence of compassion. We have compassion centers that live on our upper chest on either side of the heart. That's not from body talk, that's from breath work. And as we invite in this new life force energy through to the heart, opening up the compassion centers and invoking self-compassion, inviting in, calling in self-compassion, linking in compassion for you. And with that, I see the energy of just general that need to struggle at times for nothing more than an even being habitual sometimes, coming off of the hip flexors, coming off of the front of the hip bones, the anterior superior iliac spines, if you like super fancy names. And in doing so, they actually allow for some unwinding of the connective tissue of the iliopsoas muscles to release what they've been hanging on to, as if they've been again bracing against life itself. And with this, it's by inviting in, there's a moment in the birthing process that you extend your legs, believe it or not, as a baby inside the womb, you extend your legs and you push off of the womb, the fundus in particular, for the anatomy people in the group. And as you extend the legs, excuse me, you eject yourself into this world, into this life, into this way of doing, being, feeling. Just apparently coughing out a little excess amniotic fluid from my own lungs as I avidly relive this. You might feel that too. You might feel the need to cough or allow something to come out of the mouth, even if it doesn't seem like that's logical or sensible. Yeah. And just like babies, we have to transition. Let me say that differently. When we're first born, we transition very quickly from being water breathers to air breathers. And with every breath, inviting in this transition, this capacity that you have to adapt. That's no small thing. Within 30 seconds, you become an air breather after doing nothing more than breathing liquid and fluid, water primarily. Yeah. And just giving that all another couple of slow, deep breaths, allowing for any releasing that needs to continue to move through the body mind. I'm going to go ahead and tap this part in. And then in this heart space, I just simply hear the words, I am here, I am here. And all of you is welcome here. It's the permissions, all of you is welcome. There's a second one. It's an honor to be here with you. It's an honor to be here with you. And there's a third one, I am alive. That's linking into lung 1 acupuncture point on the upper outer chest. I'm just going to tap that part in here too, giving this all a few slow, deep breaths. As you do so, just gently scan the body-mind, noticing what's different, what's changed, what's available here that may not have been so obvious before. And just as you're settling into this new space that's here just for you, that's always been here, whether or not you've been aware of it or recognized it for what it was, allowing yourself to be here just as you are. And as you do so, I'm just going to unwind a little bit of connective tissue adhesions on the sphenoid bone. It's considered to be the most important bone in the head brain, just to support the kidney and the bladder meridian's capacity to get through to that head brain. Just adjusting that. Just a little bit of weight on the left side and a little bit of fear in the center of the sphenoid bone and that sella turcica, the Turkish saddle, where the pituitary gland that governs all of our hormones sits. Just balancing out that sphenoid bone. And in doing so, I see that taking the weight off of the left side of the body and allowing for this feminine half of you that nurtures, that nourishes to the very core. This is your yin. And allowing this nurturing nourishment to be welcomed by all of you, to sustain, to support, to nourish, not just survival, but thriving. All defined by the consciousness of integration. And just as you settle into this space, I'm present to that the only piece I really didn't mention from a left brain perspective is the planetary energy that's correlative to that 7th house where the bladder meridian runs, in case you're curious. And only if you're curious. It's Venus. It's the planet of harmony, of affection, of grace, of order, of love. If we go that far. Maternal love. It has all the faces of the feminine to it. And just recognizing that that's got your back. I've very often spoken to the back body as being masculine or young. However, this bladder meridian, this area at the very core of it is very yin, very feminine. Could be not that within the bladder meridian, pardon me, but within the planetary energy that correlates here. The bladder meridian is very young and masculine, which is why we often speak of the back body as masculine. But know that it's always tempered, always balanced with this feminine energy of Venus that has your back to create nourishment here at all times to support you. She's got your back. Yeah. And this is the dance and the balance of the masculine and the feminine supporting one another in this back body of yours. I recognize that I've gone over that hour. I had plans to play a little song to integrate this all for you, and I may go ahead and do so anyways, even though I'm a little bit over time. Just know that I'm a little over even my overtime buffer that I provided for myself. And just before I get there and allow you to integrate, you're welcome to stay on the call for as long as you like for that entire song. Afterwards, I probably won't say too much. So I'll just get those words out now before I start that song. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here, for living, for being alive, for expressing your family, your ancestry, your lineage in this way. Thank you. Thank you for your call to heal. Thank you for your call to work in this way, not for the faint of hearts. Thank you for your courage to feel. Thank you for your vulnerability in doing this work, in becoming present to all that you are. Thank you. If you feel moved or called to, feel free to share this in any way, shape, or form that feels right for you, if you feel drawn to.
Us through her dance with the sun. The stars remember us in the patterns they dance with the one. If you could remember me for just one moment, I know our love would shine through. If you could remember me for just one moment, I would not deny what's true. If you could remember me for just one moment, I know our love would shine through. If you could remember me for just one moment, I would remember you. Golden threads of your love come together to make a blanket of light. Keeps me warm in the depth of the storm. Why don't we all come inside? Shalom, Yeshua, shalom. Shalom, Yeshua, shalom. Shalom, Yeshua, shalom. Shalom. with the sun. The stars remember us in the patterns they dance with the one. If you could remember me for just one moment, I know our love would shine through. If you could remember me for just one moment, I could remember you. If you could remember me, I could remember you. If you could remember me, I could remember you.
Thank you. Such a joy, such a blessing to get to share time together in this way. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I'll stick around after the call. I'm going to stop the recording here, but if you need any additional support, feel free to let me know. Let me just press pause on this recording.